You're listening to Passing Time, a Detroit Lions podcast. We're one pride and all grit, with a passion for Detroit Lions football. Whether you're between meetings, between classes, sitting in traffic, or just relaxing at home, if you have time to pass, pass it with Passing Time. Detroit Lions Talk.
Welcome back. Post-draft, episode 50.
50.
Season 2, year 2, episode 13 of season 2, Brian.
Let's do it, man.
Hey, post-draft, we got some content tonight. We're pretty fired up.
Yep. Listen, the Lions went in there. They got a haul. We want to break them down. We want to look at them and get your reaction.
And as always, thanks for making us a weekly listen. This is a Detroit Lions podcast. I'm Rob.
I'm Brian.
Here we go. We are going to go backstage. We're entering the 2026 era here. New players, new team.
New philosophy, maybe?
Potentially. Yeah,
right.
it kind of feels like that, Brian.
It does.
We're going to break that down. How are the Lions building?
Well, I mean, you look at what they went through in each round that they had a pick, and you're getting guys that have experience. You're getting guys that are durable. And you're getting guys that are fitting needs, not just best player available. So,
And we will get into that, Brian. Don't give the secret sauce away. We're going to highlight the first-round pick, but we're going to really get into all the picks today, how they fit in with the team, how they fit in with the identity, and what the Lions potentially are doing a little bit different in this episode of Passing Time.
Let's do it.
So let's start off with Blake Miller, Brian. First-round draft pick of the Detroit Lions, one of the highest pick they've had in 3 years now.
Yeah. So Blake Miller, Clemson, 6'7", 317, age 22. So you got a youth movement here. The dude is an athletic freak, though. I mean, when he comes down to tackles, his RAS score was 9.90. So he was fourth best tackle in this particular draft, and I think it was in the upper echelon of all tackles in when the RAS score since the RAS score has come out.
So I mean, you listen to a lot of draft podcasts, and you listen to ours, you listen to other people's, and Blake Miller was a name that people were kind of like, it's an obvious Lions pick, right? Like
we even said that.
We talked a lot about that, but there was sexier picks, Brian.
I mean, Monroe Freeland seemed like a sexier pick.
Caden Proctor, if he fell,
was a sexier pick. There was guys out there that seemed to be like, oh man, the ceiling of this guy is going to be so much higher. But I don't think we're giving Blake Miller the credit he is deserving of.
We never did. So in this podcast, let's put some respect on his name.
Yep. And I'll say it, man. I didn't give him that credit either. So let's do that right here. The guy, 54 straight starts. He did not miss a single practice except one. Why did
he miss that practice?
He had surgery on his wrist. The day he missed that practice, he was back on the field the next day.
Yeah. I mean, Brian, if you wake up 54 straight times without hitting the snooze button in your alarm clock, you're a superhuman, right? Like you're just dominating the mornings, right? But if you go out and bang with other 300-pounders every single day of the week, and you keep playing, that's a trait, right?
Yep,
that's a trait that the Lions are looking for.
And that's what they're looking for. That's why he scored high in the grit index. That's why the Detroit Lions loved him, and that's why they brought him in as our hopefully starting right tackle.
So, young kid out of Ohio goes down to Clemson when Clemson is a superpower at this point in Blake Miller's freshman year. And potentially, a lot of those Clemson guys fell. The Clemson team was loaded. They severely underperformed. Mm-hmm. And maybe it was Cade Klubnik. I don't exactly know what happened down there with Dabo's kind of really the last 2 years. but he had some surefire talent. And that's one reason that a guy like Blake Miller gets overlooked. If Clemson's sitting there in the college football playoff last year, he's getting highlighted. That's a guy that maybe goes
top 10.
Top 10, yeah.
I mean, he doesn't fall to 17 for sure. So we can all be excited and lucky to have Blake Miller. He fills not just a best player available checkbox. He fills a need for the Detroit Lions. And what that does mean is that I think we've solidified our offensive line to the extent that we probably will. And I'm happy about it. I think that we've done enough this offseason with the Cade Mays move, with the Panay to left, and the Blake Miller to right. We've also brought in a ton of competition at left guard or even at that right tackle position in order to raise the floor. So
I mean, we went into this draft thinking like, okay, if we got to settle with Larry Borum as our right tackle, like we'll be good with that. Like as long as like the Lions took the best player available in the draft, we're excited about that pick. But the fact that Larry Borum is sitting there as our backup tackle is a situation that we didn't have last year at all.
We did not, and I feel pretty good about what Jared Goff is going to stand behind, coming into this season, being able to protect that middle. He can step up in that pocket. He's got guys around him that are they're going to do their job, and not only that, but they're going to finish. They're going to work their butts off in order to bring us back to the pedigree that we deserve.
So can you go through that O-line projection a little bit this coming year right now as it kind of stands, I don't know, what were we, like 4.5 months away from the start of the season?
Right, way too early, but I predict right now Blake Miller comes in and finds a way to start at that right tackle position. You got Tate Ratledge in year 2 at that right guard. He's going to continue to trend upwards. Cade Mays taking over Graham Glasgow at the center position. Left guard is going to be a question mark right now. There's going to be some competition there, but as of now, Christian Mahogany, Frazier, Barch, that San Francisco, guard that's come in to compete for that left guard position, and then Panay Sewell moving from right tackle to left tackle to anchor that offensive line. And then you look at some swing tackles, and does Larry Borum be able to be that extra guy? Does Miles Frazier fill in that role? We've got options at that point. So
it's kind of wild. Last year we didn't have this problem. If you go back a couple years, you're like, man, we were sitting here really podcasting, talking about like how the Lions have a great offensive line, but they're starting to age. Mm-hmm. Now you got Panay as like the old veteran on the block.
And he's still only 25 years old.
He's 25 years old. There's a lot of youth on this line. There's a lot of term on contracts on this line. Yep. If this line gels, this is an asset going, multiple years in for the franchise.
And, the linchpin, like we talked about pre-pod, was Cade Mays. We talked about how he is ascending. He's a guy that we're going to need to rely on in order to take a step up from last year, in order to really make sure that this can work.
And, if Cade doesn't work out, which, they vetted. You got Juice Struggs. You got potentially Frazier, Barch that could step in at center, and there's some depth there at center that if it doesn't work out. But man, you're starting to solve more jigsaw puzzles if Cade Mays isn't the guy there.
Yeah, it's not where we want to be. We'd rather have Petzing as our new OC come in with a pretty solid O-line that allows him to be flexible and do what he does, be creative, fill those roles with guys that we have. If we have 3 amazing tight ends, we're going to run 13 personnel. If we don't, we're not. So we need an offensive line regardless, in order to have that effective offense, and we're going to need that this year. So.
Yeah. So bottom line, when I think about Blake Miller, I think about high floor, high ceiling, good culture, cornerstone of the offensive line. He could be kind of the next 5 to 10 year piece that we talk about a lot, like a couple guys that have left us over the last couple of years.
Sure. I envision him. I don't know if it's this the way that he plays the game is a Taylor Decker of the right side. If you're going to replace that I'm happy with that.
Yeah, man, I like that. So transitioning into segment 2, round 2. I don't know how that worked out. Segment 2, round 2. It works out really well, though. Derrick Moore, defensive end, pick number 44 out of the national championship winning University of Michigan.
And you're going to be able to speak a lot more to Derrick Moore, knowing him and being that hyper Michigan fan that you are. But regardless, it was still a position of need, as well as a guy that we can all get behind a little bit. We've been clamoring right now for Brad Holmes to go out there and get an edge opposite of Hutch, a guy that's going to go out there and give us more pass rush, not just a guy that's going to crush a can and set an edge for the run, but a guy that's got some upside when it comes to pass rush ability, but also has got the ability to be a solid football player.
Yeah, so you want me to kind of take this from here?
Oh, man, here I'm going to sit back and get my drink.
What are you drinking tonight, Brian?
Some tequila.
I like it. So a trade-up move by Brad Holmes, right? Like controversial again. Anytime Brad does something, trading up, trading picks back. But we had to get ahead of the Baltimore Ravens.
Yep.
The Jesse Minter-led Baltimore Ravens, also with a big crux of former U of M analysts and assistants that he brought over, right? So, and the Baltimore Ravens, who they got ahead of, the very next pick drafted a what?
Defensive end.
So maybe Phil, we talked about this, a friend of the podcast, contributor to the podcast, a guy that came over and celebrated draft day here at the den at my house. It potentially was a guy that the Ravens were targeting, right? So, 4-year guy at Michigan, played on a national championship team, former high 4-star recruit, originally committed to Oklahoma out of Baltimore St. Francis. But let me tell you a little bit about Derrick Moore's background quickly. Grew up in a very, very tough household. A very typical kind of broken Baltimore area household. Biff Poggi, a guy that actually ran the football program at St. Francis, a former hedge fund millionaire in that area, said, you know what? He had kids that ran through a program, and he said, I want to give these inner city kids a chance. So what he did is he built this program recruiting guys, within a couple hours of that program. And this is a dorm room style program where he pulled kids out of their homes and he'd put them in a dorm room, give them structure, give them meals. And then he created this program that put these kids on a path to achieve their college dreams and their NFL dreams, Brian.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
No, you're rolling.
I'm rolling. So originally, Biff was still coaching that team, and Derrick Moore, recruited by everybody, he's a national recruit, committed to Oklahoma. Biff goes on and had a really good relationship with Michigan. His son played for the University of Michigan, so Biff kind of came over to Michigan to be a mentor to Jim Harbaugh, and ran kind of. He was the associate head coach, but not an official coaching position. And they recruited Derrick, and they got him to flip his commitment over to Michigan when Biff was there. And the guy played on a team with stacked defensive lines, like NFL draft pick after NFL draft pick. And all Derrick did was do the things necessary for Michigan to be successful. So a very selfless player. Hey, set the edge. Your role here. We have speed rushers on one side. I want you to set the edge on the other side. We don't have speed rushers anymore. I want you to be a bull rusher. I want you to do all these things. And all he did was be a team player, showed up every single day. The guy wasn't missing games, wasn't skipping bowls. A very, very key contributor to the University of Michigan, and a national champion, as we talked about, a captain of the defense, and a guy that the Lions traded up for to be a key contributor to your Detroit Lions football team.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I'm excited that Derrick Moore is going to be a part of this team opposite Hutch. I think that they already have a relationship to some extent, being from Michigan, being able to play together just a little bit, that freshman and sophomore to the super senior type relationship. But Derrick Moore has already said, I can't wait to learn more from Aidan Hutchinson, to be able to just be a sponge to what he has got to offer him and his growth. And not only that, but he's already a team player. He's already willing to be the Robin to the Batman across from him. So we're excited to see what Derrick Moore has value and what he can bring to this defense. And to me, this a bit of changing philosophies of defense, because Derrick Moore does not fit your prototypical 6'7", 204 or 260 pound long-armed edge setter. He is somebody that has both traits of that pass rushing as well as run stopping type of defensive end. So he's going to be versatile. He could possibly be a 3-down defensive end.
And you know what? I don't think he's going in this season. I don't think the expectation is that he's going to be your 3-down guy.
Not
but
this year.
As he grows into the year
Yes.
and into next year, this is a guy that kind of like Tate Ratledge. We didn't know what to expect, but the guy went out there and had the most starts of any offensive lineman on the team.
Yep.
Derrick Moore played 53 games at Michigan, 23 starts, 21 sacks, 25 tackles for a loss. And this was a loaded defensive line. A defensive line that actually featured 5 first-round picks during his tenure. So Derrick Moore is part of a group. And if you want the 6'7" guy, we actually signed a guy out of New Orleans who was a former first-round pick that hasn't really panned out, that has all the underwear Olympics measuring tapes. But Derrick Moore's going to go in there as a 6'3.5" guy. But a workaholic kind of guy, and I think he's going to earn your respect. So if you're a Michigan State Spartan fan, which I like the Spartans as well, and you hate the pick, but you know what? Hey guys, I got Spartan fans as friends. You hated the Hutchinson pick too. You hated it, right? And that's really worked out pretty well for the Lions. Give it a chance. This guy's got Detroit DNA. Not that he's from Detroit, but he is the working class type. He's not coming in there with he's not a product of an IMG academy, a gold-plated toilet seat kind of kid. This guy he's broken home. He's earned it every single spot. And he really fits the culture of a guy coming in Detroit and saying, I want to learn. I want to be better, and I'm going to work as hard as humanly possible to kind of fit this team. And
if you continue to look at the guys that Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell are bringing in, I think the word hungry is going to be repeated over and over and over again. It's one of those things that I think we lost a little bit last year and that we're striving to get back to. These guys that are willing to do whatever it takes to get on the field, willing to do whatever it takes to make that next step, and willing to do whatever it takes to bring a championship to these Detroit Lions. And I think Derrick Moore fits that drive, that character, that role perfectly, is that he's going to push everyone around him and make them better. So yeah, I love it. Do you have anything else you want to add before I dominate another segment? Let's do it. Let's go on to Jimmy Rolder. All right, Jimmy Rolder. You want to host me on this one? Hey, Rob, tell me about Jimmy Rolder. Our fourth round pick at 118. Fourth round pick, 118. A guy that I'm sitting there beginning of the fourth round, and I'm typing up a text message to the Passing Time podcast, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to do this. But I'm sitting there looking at the needs of the Lions, and I'm sitting there looking at the board and being like, man, Jimmy Rolder makes a lot of sense. But the Lions aren't going to pick 2 guys from the University of Michigan in back-to-back picks, right? So let me tell you a little bit about Jimmy Rolder, having some experience following his whole recruitment, his blossoming act. And maybe you know this, but I bet you if you're listening to this podcast, you probably might not know this, but Jimmy Rolder was a former baseball commitment to the University of Illinois. He's a Illinois kid. Illinois in the Big Ten is the creme de la creme baseball school.
So Big Ten's not known for their baseball. They've sent a couple teams pretty deep in tournaments, but they're kind of a lesser than conference. But Illinois is the cream of the crop. And Jimmy Roller was a baseball commitment to Illinois who blossomed late in his junior year as a linebacker in the state of Illinois and started getting recruited pre-senior year, which is really, really late. So let's call him a pretty late bloomer. Ended up developing into a 4-star and was relatively highly recruited. Michigan was on him pretty early. This was the Jim Harbaugh-led Michigan team with stacks. And at the time they were recruiting Jimmy Roller, they had Devin Bush. They had guys that were going to the NFL. So they wooed him away from his baseball commitment, his first love, baseball. Guy moves like a middle infielder. Before he came to be a linebacker, he was a skinny guy that could play a lot of different positions in the middle of the infield. So Michigan recruits him, steals him away from Illinois and a lot of national powers. Actually, Jimmy Roller, at the end of his high school year, was getting recruited by every SEC team. People were starting to get on him. Comes to Michigan, stacked room. What does he do? He carves out a really early role, special teams, becomes a special teams ace. Played special teams on a national championship football team. And later on in his career, limited starts, but develops into just a key piece to the defense. And sat behind guys a lot like Derrick Moore. When you're sitting behind really, really, really good, like Justin Jefferson was never the number one wide receiver at LSU. He sat behind really, really good wide receivers. These guys, defensive linemen, linebackers, are sitting behind a national championship team, and he really stood out on a defense once he got his shot. And it's one reason that he falls to the 4th round. He's sitting there because, you know what? He doesn't have a ton of tape. You know, if you want to look at special teams tape, if you want to look at backup reps tape, Roller's got some tape there. But he's only got 14 starts as a Michigan Wolverine. And these are the types of picks that are a little bit of wild card picks. But Brad Holmes talked about it. He started watching Michigan tape. He's like, who's this new guy? I've watched a lot of Michigan tape. They had a lot of guys come to the league. And I'm seeing this guy standing out. And he goes up in 4th round and he gets him. And this is the 4th round, Brian. It's not. Yeah. So what's our expectation here?
I think our expectation's got to be four core special teamer, somebody who can challenge maybe Malcolm Rodriguez or DeLone Clark for one of those back up linebacker spots, or maybe a role player in regards to that. But he's going to be a guy that continues to work, play with his hair on fire, goes down on kickoff and makes plays, comes back and kick return and makes good blocks. He's one of those dudes that we need as a Detroit Lion in order to make all phases go.
So, beginning of the year, not a lot of expectation. What do you say, middle, end of the year? What's your expectation for a Jimmy Roller?
I would say he's got to challenge. He's got to challenge this for maybe the Malcolm Rodriguez spot. Maybe he's develops into more of a replacement for Alex Anzalone. I think, again, this is indicative a little bit of our scheme and what we're going to see this year, because I do think that we're going to see more nickel. And we're going to get out of more base. And so we're not going to see a lot of or as much of that 3 linebacker set this year. So it allows a guy like Jimmy Roller to develop and get his feet wet without being thrown to the fire. So
as a 4th rounder, I'm going to go out. I'll make a hot take here. As a 4th rounder, Jimmy Roller, back half of the year, is your starting linebacker for the Detroit Lions. And it's not because somebody got hurt. It's not because somebody was playing bad. It's because Jimmy Roller is that good.
Do you think that Jimmy Roller is a better fit for that Sam role, a little bit more of that pressure off the edge, a coverage linebacker, or more of that Will role, like a replacement for maybe a Derrick Barnes?
That's a tough call. You know, Jimmy Roller actually played both spots at the University of Michigan. Okay. I think he is going to be more of a Sam-style linebacker for the Detroit Lions.
Like it.
It's more of a natural fit.
Okay.
So that being said, Brian, I'm going to give you a little bit of a chance to talk on the microphone, even though as a Michigan fan, I'm very excited about the first 3 picks, But this next pick we're going to talk about is probably the one and most people are the most excited about. Let's introduce you to round 5, pick 157, Brian.
Keith Abney II, which we've been talking about maybe be the steal of the draft at this point. This guy was mocked to be a day 2 guy, maybe even as high as a back of the second round, possibly top to middle of the 3rd round. So this is one of those dudes, cornerback, that just balls. Just balls. And I can actually see him starting to pressure and push for whether that's that nickel roll or even an outside roll, and he's going to fill those spots. And we've all seen the turnaround of injuries when it comes to our defensive backs. This is just, again, raising that floor and being able to have quality corners in that room in order to rely on. He's also going to push a guy like Ennis Rakestraw, who we haven't seen yet, and he's going to put like, hey, look, you got to show that you're worth anything. Otherwise, this guy's going to come in and take your spot.
So what's your expectation for Keith Abney kind of going into this year?
I think Keith Abney right away at the very start is going to pressure hard for that nickel roll. You're going to be able to come in and at least show that he's a baller. I truthfully believe that he's going to get some time come the back half of the 2026 season.
So we've talked about 4 guys, Brian, and man, like, I don't know if we're drinking the Honolulu Blue Kool-Aid here, but it certainly sounds like it to you. That it sounded a little bit like, but man, at this point, if we're cutting the draft here and we're grading the Detroit Lions draft, this is certainly kind of feeling like B+, A- range, right?
I believe if you have 4 guys that you believe are going to be contributors, 100%. You're looking at that A- B+ range, right? If you're grading these guys based upon a projection.
Okay. So about a dozen picks later, the Lions make their probably most controversial pick of the draft.
Okay.
So spin it to me, Brian, and tell me what you think about pick number 168 in round 5.
Kendrick Law. I like this guy. Wide receiver. He is more of a gadgety, quick twitch type of guy. But not only is he a receiver, he is another one of those guys that's going to fill a role, maybe a replacement for Khalif Raymond, a returner, a gunner, somebody who is going to play, again, quality special teams type a role. And he might not start off that way. He's going to maybe compete with Greg Dortch in order to be that spot. But he may be an upgrade from a Dominic Lovett, right? We drafted last year in the later rounds. He is somebody who I think, again, raises that floor. And I like this pick.
So Kendrick Law started his year out, or his college football career off at Alabama. Was first seen by Brad Holmes when he was down there looking at other guys at Alabama, thinking like, "Who's this guy? Like, I've never heard of him, seen him." Ends up transferring to Kentucky, where he gets a little bit of time at Kentucky. 53 catches, 540 yards, becomes a weapon. Kentucky also sucks.
More of a run first, like. That's all they got kind of offense. So
yeah, this is where scouting really, really matters. And I'm not saying it's going to be a hit. Every scouting is going to be a hit. But you look at like Kendrick Law, you look at Jimmy Rolder, you look at some of these guys where it's like, man, the scouting work's going to pay off. And the Lions gave up a lot of other opportunities to say, you know what, this year we're really going to dig in deep to the scouting of the draft. So we hope for a higher hit rate here, but again, 5th round pick. Your expectations shouldn't be too high, but we've seen some 5th rounders really outperform in certain drafts, right, Brian?
Absolutely, and if this guy turns into a 4th wide receiver on a pretty quality wide receiver room, then heck yeah, I'm all about it. If he turns into just a return guy and a gunner, heck yeah, I'm all about it. I mean, that is value in that pick.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, and we've seen the Lions lose games to special teams, right? Like,
Right.
So, like, special teams aren't great unless you're bad at it, and then you're really crying and moaning about your special teams. So, segment. Let's just talk, kind of group these guys together. We'll give them their own sunshine, and then we're going to group them together. But the round 6 and round 7 picks, Brian, take this away.
Skylar Gill-Howard and Tyree West, both defensive linemen. Both guys that we project that hopefully can compete, whether that's practice squad or whether that's back end of your rotation. But just high motor, high grit, high character guys that we can bring into the room and just ultimately find some competition, push everybody around them in order to be better. So
kind of opposite guys, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You look at Skylar Gill-Howard, he's a shorter guy with really long arms, like the kind of guy, it's like a flying fat squirrel that jumps off a tree. But ultra productive guy. Just doesn't fit when you try to put like defensive linemen in a box. And I'm sure teams do this, and they say, like, it's got to be this tall and this heavy. Skylar Gill-Howard doesn't really fit a lot of those molds, but, like, he was this productive, right? And that is the mold I think the Lions were looking for there.
Yep, a guy out of Texas Tech, 6'1", 280 pounds, with a wingspan that stretches from sideline to sideline, but also a guy that's high motor, high intensity, and is not willing to back down from anybody. So,
and that's a guy that you want, none other than you're talking about a 6th-round pick, like give competition, like make another guy earn a spot. I totally expect Gill-Howard to make this team and to just figure in the back end of the rotation.
Yeah, I would look at him as a Makai Wingo kind of competition. Those niche-y type D linemen that they're not really a 3-tech. They're definitely not a nose. They're definitely not an edge, but they're that kind of that tweener. But there might be a niche role for those guys too.
So then you get into Tyree West, who is like very opposite, right? Like not from a production, actually kind of from a production standpoint, but Tyree West is a guy that looks like a defensive tackle. They got the height of a defensive end, but they're lining him up out at DN, but he's bigger than a typical DN. He's more of like a edge setting guy, but they're having him rush the passer. So when you look at his pro prospects, it's like, all right, this guy I don't know where he projects, but he projects somewhere on a defensive line, interior, exterior, sub packages for goal line. But he looks like he's a guy that, like, special teams, goal line packages, certain niche situations, like he's either a really quick interior defensive lineman or a really stout exterior defensive lineman.
Another, like a Levi Onwuzurike, kind of that like versatile D lineman that can kind of stretch himself from the edge down to a 3-tech. Somebody who you can kind of place anywhere and still find production. He is relentless. He is a guy that's going to go ahead and make tackles behind the line of scrimmage. He is going to be a guy that's going to put pressure on that quarterback. But at the same time, like, he knows how to play the run. He's an aggressive guy that's I think he's a good fit for the Detroit Lions.
Yeah. So do you want to kind of flip it over to the undrafted free agents and like highlight a couple guys there?
Sure thing. Let me get down there.
So, I mean, let me kick it off here. We talked a little bit about Illinois earlier, but we got Luke Altmaier, quarterback out of Illinois.
Yep.
Just a kind of a gamer, right?
Yeah. And I to be honest with you, I see him as like kind of a pair with Jared Goff. Similar in their styles, similar in their demeanors, similar in their skill sets. So it's like, this is my offense. Jared Goff can run it. So can Luke. Yeah. You don't have to switch too many things in order for him to come in and be a fit.
My comp for Luke Altmaier is John Kitna. If we get a John Kitna out of Luke Altmaier, just a straight-up gamer, student of the game, a little bit of athleticism, willing to dive nose first for anything he gets out there.
Yep.
we're talking undrafted free agent here.
Right.
If he earns that, I mean, that's a compliment to him if he earns the John Kitna.
Right. And if he's a practice squad quarterback for us, then that's a win, right? You know, that's what we're looking for. So.
Absolute win, yeah. So is there any other undrafted free agents that you want to highlight?
Aidan Kenyatta is a guy out of Cal that we had given a $300,000 guarantee to come in. A D tackle, again, somebody that we value a little bit that could bring in some competition as well, but still a UDFA. Eric Hunter Morgan, States guy, a linebacker, another one of those depth pieces that we gave a little bit of money to come in. And then Eric O'Neill from an edge from the Rutgers. So some of these guys I feel like could be contributors, may find a role on the practice squad, and who knows if you find a guy that can catch some fire. So
man, I love how everybody calls it the Rutgers. Like it's just it's such disrespect on their name. So the Rutgers. All right. So that being all said, have you talked to your friend Bill?
I talked to Bill. I talked to Bill here and there. Yeah.
What does Bill have to say about all this?
All right, so Bill's right now, one, there's concern on the O-line. And we all know Bill now at this point, right? There's always concern.
I've yet to shake his hand, but Bill, I feel like
we know you.
Yeah.
I mean, the viewers right now, they know you. They know where Bill stands, and he's got
on the podcast, Bill.
He's got some reservations. But one of the things that Bill and I kind of started to debate was the vision of the Detroit Lions going into last season and where we stood. Where did we feel? Where was our confidence level? We came off a season that we fell short in the playoffs, but had such an amazing regular season, right? And now we're coming off a season where we fell short on both. We didn't make the playoffs. The regular season was lackluster, and we're going into now a roster that has had some turnover. So this idea of coming into the 2025 season and where our feelings, we were high on the pedestal. We were feeling good. We talked about rich people problems, all these things, and we fell short. And now going into this 2026 season, where do we stand? Do we feel better about the O-line than we did last year going into the season? Do we feel better about the defense going into this year than going into last season? Where do we feel that we've gotten better?
Are you asking the question and willing to be answered, or is this a
This was a debate that Bill and I.
Right.
This is a debate that Bill and I had, and if you know me, my glass is half full.
Nah, your glass is medium.
My glass is half.
It's half something, yeah.
So maybe Rob is half full and Bill's probably half empty, you know? So
you're a good combination of Bill and I.
So this is where we roll. But in regards to Bill, he's concerned. He's concerned about our O-line. He's concerned about Cade Mays. Has he proven enough to be the linchpin, as we say? We lose Taylor Decker, who we feel like last year was aging, injured, but still productive. Still holding his own to some extent.
Not great, though.
Not great, but still better than most, I would say.
And Grant Glasgow, not great.
Exactly right. But
Christian Mahogany, not great.
But Christian Mahogany is still on our O-line, right? And we're moving Panay to left, and so there's some transition. And change is always scary. So we talked about this, and I believe, based upon what we now know from last year, that this is a better situation.
Yeah. Going back, answering your questions. Last year playing a first place schedule, this year playing a fourth place schedule. Going to make a pretty big difference in the overall record. Not a big difference in if you are a Super Bowl contender, though, because you are who you are, right?
You are who you are.
You are who we thought you were, right?
Yeah.
So the Lions, I think they're making a concerted effort to keep the window open long. They're not going out drafting, backup quarterbacks like the Rams. They're not going out there chasing their tails, plucking wide receiver 4s in the first couple rounds. They are really building within the trenches. They're trying to keep this elongated championship window open. And what I think they did is they created the opportunity to keep that window a little wider open for Jared Goff's tenure as a Detroit Lion.
And I don't disagree. I like what they've done. I think that the idea Brad Holmes went into this draft was a little bit different, and I can appreciate that. He did not take the I'm going to try to be the smartest guy in the room and draft someone who's a project that could hit or could flop. Yeah. You know, he was more safe, you know? But in addition to that, he also looked beyond just guys that he could find high value in with some risk. He got guys that are pretty solid value with very little risk, and I can appreciate that especially in regards to injuries. You know, I think that when you look at free agents and you look at this draft class, you look at guys that have been durable. You look at guys that have been on the field, that haven't missed time, that are willing and wanting to be a part and are hungry. But ultimately, these are guys that are going to fit the character and the grit index that we know that are true Lions, and are going to be healthy in doing so.
Yeah, I mean, it's a movement towards youth. The Lions are going to be younger this year, no doubt about it. It's a healthier. They're no longer looking for the guy that was that a one-off injury? Can we get a little value from him? Can we get a discount on him and plug him in like a Marcus Davenport?
Right.
And it turns out, no, it wasn't a one-off injury. I see it. You could see it early enough at the youth level where it's like I'm sitting in a Little League baseball draft and I'm like, why is that kid still on the board? We're talking, young kids, and the guy's like, well, shows up late to every practice and every game. I'm like, well, maybe it'll change this year. Didn't change this year. And those things remain consistent through people's lives. And I think the Lions, you could dig some value out because sometimes they do change. And sometimes you really unearth some extreme value there. But most of the time, it's just that is who they are. And the Lions are turning the page on that. They're saying, we don't need to win the Powerball anymore. We just kind of want to get our money back and plus money a little bit here. And they're taking guys that have shown that they can kind of deliver. And they're going to show up each and every day with a hard nose. You talk about a Jimmy Rolder. You talk about a Derrick Moore. You talk about a Blake Miller. Those are guys that have – they're not showing up in police reports online. They didn't have a accident where they killed somebody earlier in the year and we're rooting for them to take them. They're following the draft. These are guys that they're just – good character, plain boring guys are going to show up to work, and they're going to be your blue-collar team that you're really our identity of the Detroit Lions have been promised around, right?
That's right.
So, a boring draft, but boring is good, right? Talking to my Green Bay buddy on the golf course today, Steve, saying, hey, man, what do you think about the Green Bay draft? And obviously they gave up some picks this year. And he talked about last year, I was so excited. They did an exciting draft. They drafted Matthew Golden, and that was the first time they took a wide receiver in, a Coon's age or whatever. and turned out sexy. And then a year later, it's man, that sexy is not so great. I want to go back to boring. I want to take trench players. And what the Lions did is boring. Not a lot to talk about today. But in 3-4 years, it's boring really paid off, right?
Absolutely. And if you look at those trench players, that's where we focused on, and I love it.
Brian was all over this. We've been sitting here talking off-season football, and Brian's been sitting here talking about the trenches. That's boring. It's hard to wrap a podcast around boring. But the dude's been pounding the table and nailed it, man.
Love it.
We drafted O-line, D-line, and you said that's what we're going to do the whole time.
And that's what we needed, and that's where we're going to win these games is from the inside out, not from the outside in. And if you think differently, you might not know as much ball. So we're here to talk ball and nothing else. So you have anything you want to incorporate
other than what's already been said by B. Mikes and Rob tonight?
No, hey, do us a favor, like, subscribe, pass this on to the next guy. See all of ours on social media and interact with us so that we can continue to grow this thing.
I mean, again, if you're still watching this, if you're still listening to this, if this is still honestly, thank you if you made it to this point in the podcast. It's really, really cool. Man, you need better hobbies, but we really appreciate you because I'm the guy that listens to this part of the podcast. On other podcasts, I'm like, yeah, I agree. But subscribe, tell 2 or 3 friends. One thing that's cool is our numbers are ticking up.
Yeah.
And it's cool to see that.
Yep.
It's cool to flow. And when those numbers go up, we catch on more algorithms. We put more pressure on ourselves to deliver a better product. And Brian whips me into shape and says, hey, Rob, come on. Pull your end of the bargain.
Let's go.
So we appreciate you. Next week, we promise to outperform our previous week. A lot to talk about as we enter a pretty exciting time of preseason Lions football.
Yep, we have some off-season workouts going on right now. Towards the end of May, we're starting to see some mini camps pop up, and we got some Lions football to talk about, baby.
Well, let's get after it. So
let's go.
Until next week, we appreciate you passing time with us. Stay gritty. Go Lions.
Go Lions.